Hey, and welcome once again to Ancient Ways for Modern Days. My name is Mike Freeman. I am the pastor at Valley Christian Fellowship in Longview, Washington. And today I want to speak to you out of John chapter 15. And I want to ask you to consider how effective you are in your life for things that count toward eternity, how effective you are in and of yourself. See, I don't know about you, but I can sometimes think I'm fairly confident. I'm pretty competent in my abilities. Oftentimes I can begin to rely on maybe my learning, my education. Sometimes I can rely on my personality. Sometimes I can just rely on my grit. Like I am going to just grind through whatever task lies before me. And I'm going to do this because I'm going to do it. But here's what we're going to see in today's passage. Today's passage reminds us that without remaining in Christ, without an abiding dependency and trust in Christ, even if we seem to externally do the most amazing things for God, unless we are connected to Christ, they count for nothing. Let me show you what I mean. John chapter 15, verses 4 and 5. Jesus says, "Abide in me, and I in you." Let's talk about this word abide before we move forward. Abide means to continue. It means to remain. Jesus says, remain in me, stay in me, continue in your faith in me. And as you abide in me, remember that I am in you. He says, as the branch cannot bear fruit by itself unless it abides in the vine, neither can you unless you abide in me. He says, I am the vine, you are the branches. Whoever abides in me and I in him, he it is that bears much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing. Now, what is Jesus saying here? He's saying that this dependence upon him, this continued dependence upon him, is the determining factor for us bearing fruit. Now, remember what we said fruit is. Fruit is your character, becoming more and more like Christ from the inside out. Fruit it's other people's lives being changed as we share the gospel with them. This is the call of the believer. We are called to bear fruit, but this is not a kind of fruit that we say, oh, I must work harder. Rather, the fruit that is produced that actually has eternal consequence, the fruit that is produced that is valid and valuable, is the fruit that results from remaining in Christ, trusting in Christ, continuing in Christ, depending upon Christ. Let me bring this into your life right now. Maybe you're a young man or a young woman and you're attempting to figure out life. You're trying to figure out what your priorities should be. You're trying to figure out the life you should live. Maybe you're figuring out dating relationships. Maybe you're trying to figure out your future career and where you're to land. Listen, all of those decisions, all of the outflow of that, really, it's going to be a result of whether or not you do what you think is best and you just kind of focus on your own life, or whether or not you remain in Christ. Whether or not you're humble before Christ, whether or not you're depending on him and trusting that he will in fact lead you. Remain in him. Abide in him. Maybe you're a mom or a dad and you're trying to parent your kids and you're stressed out because you're not sure about the future of your child and you want so much for them and you're not sure whether to push in certain areas or to give them room in certain areas, and maybe you're even kind of anxious in this and you're not sure what to do, and there's moments when you maybe hold on too tight and moments where maybe you're not holding on tight enough. Listen, in all of that, the ultimate response of your heart is to say, Lord, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to depend on you. I'm going to do what you tell me to do. I'm going to do the best I can to act based on what your word has said, but ultimately I am trusting, I am depending, I am remaining, I am abiding in Christ. Jesus is my only hope. See, this abiding is ultimately this humble posture before God when we trust in him, in his ways, in his faithfulness, in his goodness, more than we trust in our own abilities to manipulate or control the situation. This is what it looks like to abide in him. Sure, we can get lots done, but if it's not connected to him, ultimately we can do nothing. I think when it comes down to it, abiding in Christ is really this question where it says, am I being self-dependent? Am I being self-reliant? Or am I trusting in Christ? Am I depending on Christ? The actions might actually be the exact same. You might actually do the exact same things when you're self-reliant or when you're Christ-reliant, but it's the posture of your heart. It's where your hope is set. It's where your faith lands. Is it in you, in your abilities, or is it trusting in Christ? Jesus' words really are our ancient way for our modern day. Abide in Christ. Continue in him, trust in him, remain in him, and trust that he is in you. Because apart from him, you can do nothing.